It's absolutely no secret. I think if you had to go out and buy a ute right now, you should go and buy a Ford Ranger. On many occasions. I've said it's the benchmark, and I totally stand by that. And honestly, companies that are currently developing new mid-size utes agree. For example, the new Tasman ute being developed by Kia is almost exclusively being benchmarked with the Ranger based on off-record discussions I've had with insiders there. And so I really mean it when I say that I'm worried that the all-new BYD Shark ute will genuinely kill the Ford Ranger. And here's why. Built by Chinese manufacturer Build Your Dreams, the BYD Shark will be the first plug-in hybrid ute available in Australia. BYD as a company have had a monumental rise, last year becoming the #1 electric vehicle brand in the world, overtaking Tesla, and that's huge news and really no small feat. They entered Australia in just 2022 with their Atto 3 mid-sized SUV and have since launched the Dolphin small electric hatchback, the Seal mid-sized electric sedan, and most recently their Sealion 6 plug-in hybrid. That last one is so important because the technology within it, which will be very similar in most ways to the BYD Shark ute, was enough for me to call it the best SUV I've ever reviewed, all things considered, including price. The BYD Shark itself is actually quite a large ute and it's built on BYD's dual mode off-road platform. So unlike most plug-in hybrids, it's not a platform that started out its life as a combustion engine platform and then was later adapted to be an EV. In fact, when I spoke to the BYD engineers at the Sealion 6 launch just a few weeks ago, they explained to me that it's the other way around. It's an EV platform adapted for a combustion engine. And it's really important because it means that more thought is actually given to electric motor and battery placement, performance, rigidity, cabin space, and many other factors. In terms of size, the BYD Shark is actually longer than the already huge GWM Canon Alpha at 5,457 millimeters long. It's also 1,971 millimeters wide and 1,925 millimeters tall, with a wheelbase of 3,260 millimeters. So it's pretty huge, and despite its already relatively huge size and weight, it still has a payload rating of 835 kilograms, which, although is definitely not class leading, it's actually more than acceptable. And what makes that even more impressive is that the BYD Sealion 6 is not leaf sprung. It has coils all around, which should theoretically make it more comfortable on road than all of its competitors, except for the Ranger Raptor, which also has coils all around. But of course, we'll have to wait until the launch of the Shark a little later this year, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel so that you don't miss out that video when it does drop pretty soon. And speaking of Ranger Raptor, the BYD Shark is actually faster than a Ranger Raptor, with a claimed 0-100 kilometers an hour of 5.7 seconds. Of course though, we'll test those claims at its launch like we do with every car. Really, the only downside I can see of the BYD Shark is its towing capacity, which will be locked to 2.5 tons, in large part due to its coil-sprung suspension and hybrid powertrain. So that's a ton less than a diesel-powered Ford Ranger, and we don't know what the upcoming Ranger plug-in hybrid will be able to tow, but it seems like they're also trying to get 3.5 ton for that too. So that'll be an interesting fight. But powering the BYD Shark is a 4th generation of BYD's DMI system, which stands for Dual Motor Intelligence. It combines a 1.5 litre turbo petrol engine and 2 electric motors, one at the front axle and one at the rear, and the total system outputs are 320 kilowatt of power and 650 newton meters of torque. It comes of course with BYD's Blade battery, which is quite renowned at this point for being one of the safest batteries out there thanks to its LFP or lithium ferrous phosphate chemistry. And it's a big boy, 29.6 kilowatt hours. So the battery size is big, and that gives it an electric only range of 100 kilometers on the NEDC standard, or about 80 kilometers on the more realistic WLTP standard. It also has an impressive DC fast charge rate of 40 kilowatts, which for a battery that size is fantastic. And BYD, to be honest, are usually spot on with their range claims, as we've seen with their Sealion 6, where I got almost exactly the range claim of 81 kilometers for that SUV. So that electric only range of 80 kilometers absolutely smashes the Ford Ranger PHEV's WLTP claim of about 45 kilometers, literally almost half of that of the range of the BYD Shark. The BYD Shark also comes with V2L, or vehicle to load, which means it can power pretty high output devices using its own battery. Of course, once you run out of range in the BYD Shark, it will kick in its petrol motor and act like a Toyota closed-loop hybrid system. And with a claimed fuel economy of 7.5 litres per 100 kilometers in hybrid mode, you can expect a total range of about 840 kilometers. Moving inside, the cabin is genuinely luxurious. I probably shouldn't say this, but I've spent a little bit of time with one of the prototypes of the Shark, currently being tuned in Australia, and I'm not gonna lie, it blew me away. As we've come to expect from BYD recently, the Shark has literally every feature thrown at it. In front of the driver is a 10.25-inch digital instrument cluster, there's a 12.8-inch rotating infotainment display, the heads-up display, and heaps of storage space. The back seats look really roomy too, thanks in large part to the big length of the Shark. Off-road credentials too are nothing to sneeze at. With its independent suspension all around, it will likely be a pretty formidable off-roader. It also has 282 millimeters of ground clearance and extensive underbody protection too. Its approach angle is 31 degrees and the departure angle is 19.3 degrees, both of which fare well against competitive figures. And of course, it will come with BYD's Level 2 autonomous driving safety suite, which, although when it first launched in Australia was frankly terrible, it's since been updated quite a lot, and even in the C-Line 6 was able to drive itself down the highway with really no big issues. What will really seal, pun intended, the fate of the Ford Ranger though, and frankly every other ute on the market, will be pricing. Because BYD has some of the sharpest and most aggressive pricing in the market on purpose, and other manufacturers have definitely been hurting in sales as a result. In Mexico, the BYD Shark is priced between 81,500 to 87,800 Australian dollars when you convert it. However, BYDs in Australia are actually cheaper, and we're expecting the Australian price to sit somewhere between $60,000 to $68,000 for the base model, and somewhere between $64,000 and $73,000 for the top spec model. And if true, and honestly it probably will be, the BYD Shark will come in so significantly cheaper than an equivalent Ford Ranger, Toyota HiLux, and even some cheaper alternatives like the Isuzu D-Max. And for everything that you will be getting with the BYD Shark, that will be an absolutely terrifying price for existing manufacturers. But this is a really good thing, I think, for the ute industry. Far too long, manufacturers like Toyota with their HiLux have just been charging really high prices for their utes with, frankly, very little innovation. And internally, they know that as well. The light commercial vehicle segment is one of the most profitable in the world, and that's why manufacturers like Kia with their Tasman and BYD with their Shark are developing utes for that market. Competition is fantastic, and I'm frankly completely here for it. But like I said at the beginning of this video, the BYD Shark is stacking up so good already that a part of me is genuinely worried for the Ford Ranger, and especially its upcoming plug-in hybrid. Of course, the elephant in the room is going to be reliability, but BYD has already proven that in the last decade especially, it has made some pretty incredibly reliable vehicles. And having a heavy reliance on an electric motor is actually great, because typically they are far more reliable than a combustion engine, which, you have to think about it, literally explodes dinosaurs. It's really the perception of Chinese car reliability in Australia that will potentially hinder its uptake, especially as reliability, or at least perceived reliability, is often the #1 buying criteria for people who are buying utes, whether privately or as a business, both of which are huge markets here. So it will be really interesting to see how BYD overcomes that perception in Australia, in South Africa, in the world as time goes on. But based on the almost flawless reliability of their other cars in Australia so far, I think that perception will eventually die over time, like it has with Hyundai and Kia. Mostly. But let me know what you guys think of the BYD Shark down in the comment section below. Do you think that this is a good or bad thing for the ute industry in Australia? And are you going to buy one? Of course, if you are going to buy any new car, including any new BYD, you can do so through carsource.com/buy. My team has access to the best deals with cars that are actually in stock, and it's a totally free service for you because we charge those pesky dealers. Yeah, very interesting times we're in, and no ute is safe. Ciao for now.